So hello, welcome along to Haway the Togcast podcast here with myself. I'm Ross from RGX Media, and this is Michael.
Hello everyone. Hello there, how are we doing?
Yeah, so here we go. This is our very first episode of hopefully a long series where we get to chat about everything about photography, videography, sport, landscape, weddings, you name it, everything from in between. Obviously, my involvement when I've been doing stuff with Sunderland FC, and obviously yourself, Michael, doing stuff at Morpeth Town. We're just going to basically jump in and see what we've learnt from the start and where we're up to present, and if we can share any help and tips and advice, or just a bit of everything really, and then hopefully I'll just see where it goes to and go from there really. But yeah, happy to hand over to you, Michael, and see what your thoughts about this week's episode.
Well, yeah, I thought with this first episode would be kind of an introductory episode to find out, as Ross has already mentioned, who we are, what we do, who we work with, how do we pick things up. Is it a case of just pointing the camera and clicking? It's just a case of just trying to talk about why we love what we do, and it's not so much on a professional level as yet. I mean, I would imagine the goal is to get there eventually. And that's why I figured we'd do this podcast together. I mean, it's a no-brainer, wasn't it, really, mate? When you pitched the idea to us to be like, you've got the following of Sunderland fans, which is always great in my eyes, being a fellow Mackem, and me working with more with the non-league scene, so there's a good contrast there. And just what we've done in the past and up to now, I think it'd be, for us to share this and hopefully inspire, pass on some tips and advice, and maybe one day down the line get a couple of guests on as well.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. I think the concept of this, where I've listened to, there's various podcasts out there, you kind of just get your zone out, especially if you could be editing, you put a podcast on in the background and listen to. And I just thought that, again, as far as I'm aware, if there's anything similar to this, when I spoke about it before that, I don't know if there's many photography podcasts where kind of dabble a bit of everything really, where I thought the idea of two local lads from Sunderland kind of on the same journey doing something similar but obviously something different at the same time, come together, share their experience, what they've learned, what's went amazing, what hasn't went so well, and then just kind of just pick apart it really, then also touch upon other various subjects. Like I see you can cover, we've got mental health we can pick up on, the benefits of picking up a camera and just getting out there just for a change of scenery, and then see how well that's been beneficial over the course of time. The flip side of it, where you get the burnout, the challenges you face. It's just that we've got so much we can show from our side of things, and whether people relate to it or whether, again, we've got options to ask people who want to listen to this, if they want to ask any questions, if we haven't touched upon anything, that we can basically give our opinion on it. Again, it might not be the right way to go about things, because like I said, I'll happily hold my hands up. I am nowhere near in the professional bracket, far from it. I've only been doing this just over 2.5 years so far. So I'm still well into the amateur category, despite the opportunities I've had so far. I'm still on a massive learning journey here. So again, we're just treated as purely amateur, similar to this podcast, and just go from there. And again, hopefully the main gain, I suppose, is to whether you can be classed as professional or not. It's not something I'm wanting the title for, but I suppose with the better experience you get from all this, you just never know what opportunities may come of it, where you might be able to more on a professional level. But yeah.
So what got you going in this, Ross? For people who might not, from my audience, he says audience like he's got a massive following. I've got about 800 followers on Instagram. I've literally got my mum and my dad following us, but and a couple of my friends. What do you think? What made you pick up the camera? For your point of view, what made you go, you know what, I want to give this a good go?
I mean, I've always had a bit of an interest with it years ago, but then again, you're just kind of thinking, I'll get around to something eventually. But then you see the price of things, you think, you know what, it doesn't matter, far too expensive, I'll just rely on my old trusty mobile phone, which camera phones over the years have got better and better, to the point where some of the phones now, some photos you can get off a phone is just crazy compared to what it would be 10 years ago. But yeah, my journey basically started off with I'm not as much involved now, but I still got involved with an Italian car club in the Northeast called the Bath Club Northeast. So my involvement with that was I wanted to make our socials look a lot better, because taking a photograph on a phone is one thing, and you can get some good photos, but for me, like a camera to a mobile phone is totally night and day, especially with the various lenses, this, that, and the other that comes with it. I just thought I need to kind of like up the game on that to make it look more appealing, especially with cars and so many variety of them. You can get some amazing shots with the camera. So that was me kind of main focus, what I wanted to do initially. I had no idea I wanted to get into sport. I just thought it's going to be purely cars, because that's what most of my time was kind of taken up with. And I think like most people, when they had we got stuck in that lockdown phase where everyone kind of had so much time on their hands, right, I need to find a hobby, something to kind of do to pass the time, because you get stuck with these Zoom quizzes with family, and you're just stuck in the house most of the time, or you're trying to think of things to do to pass the time. End up buying a camera, but typically picking it up at the worst kind of period, thinking, oh well, we've got all these events coming up, I can learn using the camera, get better at it, well, hopefully get better at it, and then see where it goes from there. But like when the whole thing came about, lockdown kicked in and all of our events got cancelled, unfortunately, and then it was kind of like, right, well, I can only focus on my own car, on my own drive, or what else do I do? So you kind of think, right, I need to branch out and learn not just about cars, I need to learn about other things like landscape or portraits, anything like that. And I suppose in that downtime period, you just end up falling down that YouTube rabbit hole of trying to find videos, how to learn, what are compositions, what settings are there on the camera, what lenses, you name it. There's just so much involved with it, where although the lockdown was annoying and hard and challenging, that came with it, but in that time, it was quite beneficial in a way, because I had so much time. You could just sit and watch stuff on YouTube or other means of media to kind of just learn and get better at the craft, really. And it kind of just went from there. And then cars really took a back seat, and then you go out more doing landscape, and then everything else followed thereafter. I mean, it'd be interesting to see what your side was. Was it kind of similar to that, or how was your journey?
So the photography side didn't really pick up until the same time as you, like lockdown wise. But I've always had an interest in videography since like mid-teens, where I would make really random, crappy, shitty videos on Movie Maker. And I used to make little quote videos, like the really bad ones you see when YouTube first kicked round, like really bad. And that was me introduction to videography, because it was easy for me. Like some people who try videography now, like yourself maybe, and even me now, where they would just look and go on the University of YouTube and just drink in as much information as possible. YouTube wasn't around when I started video work. It was literally just, I did it naturally. So I've always had a bit of a gift on that creative aspect. And as the years have gone by, I was using HD cameras to film football matches for Jarrah Roofing when they were around in the non-league scene, and that was me cutting my teeth almost into football and sports media. And then that evolved into boxing, where I was part of a stable called Fighting Chance Promotions, and that was again using an iPad, a really old banged up iPad and a camcorder to film boxers like John Lewis Dickinson, who was a British, British cruiserweight champion. He won a world silver belt at the arena, which was up there with one of the best memories I've ever had, and doing interviews for them. And then that kind of just went on to England Athletics, and then again I went up to Morpeth, where they were just quite open to being well, the floor is yours. Basically, we don't really have any guidelines or set targets. Just do what you think's best. And the alternative view came around basically just it was actually what I've been wanting to do something like that for a long time. Ever since I used to watch the early Manchester City Inside City videos on YouTube when I used to work at when I was I volunteered at Gateshead College to be a sports reporter because my background I've got a degree in sports journalism, which I'll be honest with you, it was a waste of time. All it's taught me how to use is WordPress, and that's about it. But from that, that's how my journey picked up from doing behind the scenes videos. I always think football clubs doing these kind of things would be quite beneficial because other than the highlights and the post-match reaction, you don't really get an insight of football clubs doing what Man City did. And I felt I was commenting on Sunderland's page for ages to say you need to do stuff like this, thinking that could be my foot in the door. I'm still waiting for the call, by the way, if it ever comes. But the thing is, I love seeing stuff like that. So when Morpeth gave me the opportunity to do that, I grabbed it with both hands and ran with it. And then for the photography aspect, that kicked in around about just before lockdown. I gave it a go in my first or second season with Morpeth. I might have been the first because I think the second was COVID. And I was just picking up my camera and just hitting stills in between video breaks. And I quite enjoyed it. I didn't know what I was doing, but I quite enjoyed it. So I tried to learn things on YouTube. Came to lockdown, kind of just, as you mentioned, just hone the craft. Just like learn about the camera, learn about the different settings, and not just stick it on automatic and hope for the best. Like learn to use manual, learn to use like different focal ranges on your lenses, shutter speeds, how it has to differ from like say a nighttime shoot to a daytime shoot to a sunset or sunrise shoot to a astrophotography, and just like yourself, like just spreading yourself across different subjects and not just sticking down one lane. Just, you know what I mean. So for me, that was pretty much where the journey started, and it's still going now. I mean, landscapes. I did a couple of landscapes and I don't really click with landscapes anymore. I'm not a big fan of them. I think they look fantastic, but I think it's just, for me personally, it's samey same. It's the same out. It's the same look. It doesn't really pop like when you do your pictures for the Italian cars. You got a way of making them pop. Same with football. I think for landscapes I kind of don't really do as much, but sports stuff I'd love to press on with that mind.
I think with you just like saying that, mate, like, I don't know if like it's kind of, I mean, I could be wrong in saying this, but I don't know if everyone who has started to pick up a camera, whether they think, right, I purely want to focus solely on wildlife or solely on portraits, or whether they decide, you know what, I'm going to try a bit of everything and just see what clicks. I suppose everyone is different in that respect. I mean, for me, I just thought I was going to be purely just focused on cars, because obviously I was out virtually every weekend, especially across like from the spring and summer months. I'd be at a car show somewhere in the northeast or across the country doing stuff with the Bath group. And that would be my go-to over the past so many years. And then kind of when I eventually moved away from, like obviously I sold the car and moved away from, although I'm still technically involved, but nowhere near as much as I should have been now. Other things like changed, so I was getting more used to being out with the camera, and I started doing a lot more landscape stuff where I think before owning a camera, if you'd have said to me, get up for a sunrise at like in the summer months of 3, 4, 5 in the morning, it'd have been absolutely no chance. Just the idea of like thinking I'm missing out on sleep here, no way. To then having that completely flipped over where I'd be out 3, 4, 5 times a week, just getting up at like well before the crack of dawn just to get either down the seafront or a particular point of interest. And like learn more stuff on landscape, and like as you see over the course of that time till now, like the landscape stuff's more of, it's gone on a bit of a back burner really, where I'll still happily do it, but I'm not as, like, I don't have the enthusiasm for it compared to doing the sports stuff. You kind of just dip your toe in a few things and go, yeah, I'm enjoying it now. Then after a while you think, it's getting a bit repetitive, or I'm just not having as much fun as doing something else. So yeah, I think of like the journey's been kind of like just riding the wave. Something else will come up, try that, enjoy for a while. But I think the sports side with you mentioning there, I think once you kind of find something that clicks, it's hard to then go back to like all those other subjects. You just want to focus on something more and then build on it and then see what can come from it then on.
Yeah, I definitely think that because, like, for me, target wise, I would love to work at a football club full time. Um, I think that's always been I know that things are different compared to what they were, say, 5 years ago, where you would work within a club full time and you were that person. Now it's sort of like you're a freelancer or you're on a retainer, which, I mean, that would be great if it's like with a big club, where you know you're going to get guaranteed work. But obviously, if it's freelance, nothing's guaranteed. So, well, you could say the same about a job, anyways. Like any job, nothing's guaranteed in a job. Like, I mean, with Sunderland's track record with managers as well, like, see what I mean? So the thing about that is, I would love to work in a club full time. The goal would obviously, I would love to do what you've done and get involved with Sunderland because it's my boyhood club. But if not Sunderland, then any club that wants to that looks to have a different edge on things. You know what I mean? I would love to just working with Morpeth has taught me a lot of things, and they're only a part-time club. So, and I love the atmosphere you get around a club, especially like Morpeth, where last season was a tough season, and there was times where me and Ross, the media manager, they were kind of like, oh, we're going to jack this in. Like, I can't keep doing this. I can't keep giving away my Saturdays. That happens in football. So when you kind of get over that little disappointing fact, that it makes you want to come back. So target-wise, to me, doing all that and trying to just literally try every sort of aspect of photography and finding something that, as you've already said a few times now, I was going to say, no pun intended, clicks. So that's what I kind of want to do target-wise for me, is just getting involved with as much as sport as possible, because growing up, sport was everything. Everything. There's videos of us using a plastic golf club, and to be fair, I was swinging it a lot better than I am now. And like, things like that, just I would love to do. Like, if it is golf, if it's football, I've even been involved with rugby league, which I'm no expert in rugby league, but I quite enjoyed getting involved with that with Newcastle with Newcastle Thunder. So for me, just that for a target wise, coming off what we've kind of talked about our history and where we've discovered what our strengths and weaknesses are, working in a football club's got to be up there for me. I don't know what it's like for you.
Yeah, I mean, I think given the opportunity here, because I think I've had a few people message over the past year and a bit saying, oh, how did you get this opportunity? Like, what did you do to gain that? And it was kind of like, I don't know if off the back, I'm trying to remember how the actual story panned out, because initially what I did was this is how I went about things. Whether it's the right way to do it or not, I don't know, but I'm just basically sharing how I went about it. Obviously, you have the under-21s, under-23s. I mean, they change the name that often. So anyway, they play up Hetton, and it's only a couple of miles along the road to me. And obviously, when they decided to play up there in the evenings, I thought, if there's a chance for you to try and learn to do some sport stuff, possibly go up there on an evening and then just see how you go about getting access to it. And I didn't realise how relatively straightforward it was, just to kind of just rock up with me gear and stuff. And I thought, I'm going to obviously watch the reserve team play or the youth team coming through, and kind of just basically get enough work on me craft there, learn, and see where we'll go from there, really. And after a couple of times of doing a couple of games and thinking, oh, well, I'm starting to get the knack of this, but again, there's a lot to take in. Where does it go from here? And then after, a couple of games, I ended up getting a message out of the blue directly from the club. Say on the back of, we've seen the stuff you've done around the city, also around the stadium with your drone and everything. Would you be interested in kind of like collaborating on a project going into, so this was off the back of last season. So if you're thinking, was just before, a couple of games just before the playoffs last year. It was like kind of we can work together, or can we use some of your obviously images we can use for our socials when we promote like the up and coming games or the team shoot, we can use your images for that type of thing. So I was, to me, when I was getting that message, I was like, Yeah, have everything. just take anything you need. Because to me, as you say, we're both lads from Sunderland, so the idea of obviously working with the club you've supported all your life, and I was just like, kind of like, this shouldn't be happening, not, at least not this early in the process of it all. So I like, you just kind of like, the kid in you is like, this is like mental, like how is this happening? But I was just like, yeah, if you need anything from my side, we'll happily sort something out, no problem. And I think off the back of that, it was kind of like I shared across some of the photos I'd taken of the players playing the reserve games, the 23s or the 21s. And it was kind of like, oh, well, would you like to come and do one of the match days here? And I was kind of like, I think for me, I didn't even, I got like offered that rather than having to, oh, can I do this? At least I think so from memory anyway. But at the same time, I was like, wow, like I'm going to be potentially in the stadium doing this. So then you start thinking, the self-doubt going, hang on, have I got the correct gear for this? Because you don't want to be rocking up with your standard kit lens, and you just don't want to be like thinking, oh God, I'm going to be kind of surrounded by, the club staff, and also the national press are going to be here. So that side of it was quite daunting. But I suppose when these opportunities come around, you can't really be like, oh, thanks for the opportunity, but I'm not good enough, so I'm going to say no. You kind of just think, at the very least, give it a go, see how it is, and if you enjoy it, hopefully the opportunity might come of it. If it doesn't progress, then at least you can say, oh, well, I gave it a go. It may not have worked out now, but that might not be a closed door in the future. It could happen again. Or you can at least try and say, you know what, I didn't enjoy it at all. I'd rather be in the stands with friends or family or whatever, and just watching it from that side of things. But similar to you, obviously you probably had that creative freedom going into Morpeth, at least giving you that opportunity to just basically put your twist on it and how you want to see you've got your vision of how you want it to come about. And I think the fact that Morpeth give you that like freedom to do so, like, speaks volumes. Going to see that for what you've got to look forward to going into like the season ahead. I don't know, was it from your side, was it daunting, or did you underestimate how like challenging it was going to be, or did you kind of take it no problem? Was it a relatively straight transition?
For me, it wasn't daunting. I mean, when I lived in Morpeth, I won a season ticket online. It's really embarrassing. So I had a running account on social media, which I used to hammer when I was well into me running. I'm not going to tell you what it is, but people will probably find it. But I entered the club competition to win a season ticket, and I won through that account. It was embarrassing. So if the lad who lived in my estate was absolutely raging, but a funny raging, like, I don't understand how you've got a season ticket. I've been going for years, and you've just rocked up, moved in here and got a season ticket. So I took my camera the last game of the season thinking, do you know what? I'm going to ask the club if it's okay to film something, like a behind the scenes, to, see if I've still got it. And when I met with them, with Ross and Sam when he was there, Ross was, like I mentioned, like Ross was just like, do what you want. Like, we just don't have any barriers here. Just whatever you want to do creatively, do it, because we just don't have it here. Like, we're so stuck with creative stuff. We just need a facelift. So that's exactly what I did. I just watched and subscribed, created my own little private YouTube channel for like a media perspective, so I could just identify that channel, like to like different creators and sports clubs. And I just sat and watched what different clubs did, and I tried to apply that to Morpeth. Now, was it easy? Yes and no. I mean, I was working off a camera that was not relatively old, but it was showing signs of wear and tear. I've still got it, and I still use it, to be fair, so I'm getting the most out of it. But I had like an old MacBook Pro, which was from 2008, I think it was, so it was on its last legs. I was using Final Cut Pro, because I used iMovie prior to that, so it was quite easy to make the transition from iMovie to Final Cut, because it's the same company. And then once it got to a certain stage where me Mac packed in, I thought, I'm going to have to invest in myself here. So at this point, I was starting to make a bit of money, not just with work, but just with some freelance gigs, and I put some money aside and got some money. when I moved back to South Shields, and just invested in myself. And when they said, like, the thing what was quite good is I was always setting a goal there, a target of I need you to do at least one different angle per game, like you do the alternative view, and it doesn't have to be anything fancy, it doesn't have to be anything flash or super creative. Like, look at what other clubs are doing. Can you sort of copy it? Because I always feel copying is a form of flattery. As long as you
Yeah.
don't like stonewall copy it like for like, but if you can pull something from a video and add your spin on it, I think that's a form of flattery. So what with the alternative view, it was like doing that. Can I put my stamp on it, put my impression on it, and it's done well. Like sometimes on YouTube, it's a bit of a struggle, but you got to think for the demographic and more. With I think it's not really for Sunderland. You can definitely tell it's a wide demographic. In terms of your ages, but with more with it's quite a quite I would say a narrow demographic. So like things like YouTube, not many people have access to YouTube. It's very Facebook friendly and very Twitter. So putting the alternative view on there is quite hard. But when you get feedback saying I really enjoy the alternative view, that's massive for me because I don't
Yeah.
do this gig to get like a pat on the back. Do you know what I mean? I don't do it to get fluffed up all the time or look for the attention. I'm quite a quiet person. I'm quite a bit of an introvert. But when you hear things like I really enjoy the alternative view, that makes my day, and it really like it brings on a bit of confidence because if you if you're having a bit of a sticking point with creative stuff, hearing things like that gives you a reason to continue it, even if you would never do it, but you've always at some point, and I think you've done this, Ross, is you thought, oh, I'm not doing this anymore. But then someone said something or something's gone well, and you're thinking, actually, I was a little bit over dramatic. I'm going to continue doing that. So
Oh, mate,
honest,
I think I've lost count how many times where I've just thought, not so much like whether it's sport or the cars or whatever. There's been many a times you just think, why am I bothering? Like I'm doing this. I'm like, am I doing this for nothing? I'm not saying it's about like getting paid far from it, but like you kind of spending all these hours where you could. Some people could argue, oh, you could be doing something more productive or whatever. I mean, I've lost count how many times my girlfriend said to us, thinking like, you're wasting all these time, all these hours doing this, and you're getting like no recognition for it, no one's asked, sort of thing. But you kind of like you question yourself, thinking, am I doing enough for that? Is it like why am I putting myself through like the torture? Like, I mean, I didn't think I had anxiety until I picked up a camera. I think that was like the trigger because there's been like nights where you're trying to get your head down on the pillow and you're thinking, you just kind of sleep because your heart's racing, thinking like, fuck, like why? Why am I feeling like this? I think it's because you care so much about wanting to develop and get better at the craft. And again, it's not so much about the recognition that comes with it, but I think there's been times where you do hit that wall and then you just start questioning, is it even worth it? But then you snap out of it a bit more and then you might get obviously a good passing comment or just something could blow up where you've posted something and it goes viral around whether it's around the city or like nationwide or whatever. You just think like, wow, like I didn't expect this. Where a deal or so before I was thinking of just getting rid of all my gigs. I've had enough. So there's that mental challenge that comes with it where it can be doing this has been so rewarding. I'm kind of kicking myself. I wish I'd done this years ago, but it's kind of like maybe this wouldn't have happened years ago. So you got to enjoy for where it is now. But there's been plenty of times where I've just thought, oh, like I could easily jack this in and just not bother no more. But then I get told if you did do that, then you'd have a massive void to fill and try and think of something else you'd want to do. And I think it's just I think it's here to stay until something really sends us over the edge, But
did you ever have that when you did the Ed Sheeran gig? Because that was massive for you. The Sunderland gig's big enough as it is, but when you get a nod to do the official, correct me if I'm wrong, the official like performance photography for Ed Sheeran when he came to Sunderland, did a bit of that anxiety kick in because it was like, holy shit, this is Ed Sheeran. Like I'm going to be within touching distance of one of the biggest pop stars ever.
yeah, I mean, it was like, again, that kind of opportunity came again, I think, off the back of how well the couple of games off the last season went and now the playoffs did. It was kind of people obviously from the inside of the club had eyes on what I was doing, and it must have been doing something good. Because I think just before I touch upon the Ed Sheeran thing, like the way how I wanted to, like my vision of how I wanted to see my images showcased to the wider audience is that I always had that story in mind where I hadn't seen it happen at our club. Yes, obviously there's photographers there and they take the photos of players in action and that, but I love the element of our club's history from the inception days all the way through, like the stories over the years and the decades to where we are now. I think that I wanted to kind of showcase that story. Like for me, I would have loved to have gone back to the Roker Park days, all that element of the old ground and the stories from there. You always see like the photos from years gone by in the 80s and 90s and previous to that. That's like the story of seeing like a father and son or a father and daughter, mother and son, and friends, family, you name it, going to the game. And I wanted to kind of put that story of capturing it from walking from the city to the stadium, people enjoying themselves, like, taking the kid the first time or going with a group with the lads, or, like mothers and daughters going together. I wanted to kind of capture that story and put my own twist on it. And I think from there, maybe the club has saw something and they said, oh, well, want to kind of bring that journey towards, can you do that for the Ed Sheeran concert? And when an opportunity came up, which is kind of like, again, you sit back and when you're reading the message, you're going, is this meant to be for someone else? Because, there's probably people out there who do, like, whether it's concert photography gigs in the city centre or whatever particular venues they're in, that probably do this hundreds, thousands of times, whether it's just local bars or venues, and they're chomping at the bit just to get that eyes on them for that one gig, to do it at a stadium or a huge venue. And the fact that my very first music involved gig was the Ed Sheeran at the stadium. So I'm starting to think to myself, right, I should not be having this opportunity. It should be really ideally for someone who's probably put the hours and, the blood, sweat and tears into it to get this opportunity. And it was kind of like, right, it was quite a bit overwhelming to think that you start doubting yourself again, thinking, can I step it up to the plate and do what's going to be what they want? But it was like, obviously on the run up to it was kind of like, right, here we go. There's no backing out now. Just go for it and see what happens. And it couldn't have gone like any better, really. It was just kind of like, I treated it as like a match day where you just meet people outside, albeit they're all Ed Sheeran fanatics and fans from all over, not just from Sunderland, but people obviously came far and wide to see him. And you just get chatting to loads of people and everyone's game because everyone's on top buzz, want to, get in the stadium and look forward to it. It was just a crazy experience, but also just something different. At the end of the day, you're still just using your camera and taking photographs, but it's getting to see what goes on from the other side, where from nearly getting potentially kicked out of the stadium during the actual concert itself. So there's like little stories that come about as part of the experience, which was obviously just like, it was nearly obviously getting the camera taken off you, even though you're there as part of the gig. So you've had little stories like that in between, but it's all part of the experience. But I came away from it thinking like, it was just like, wow, that's just happened. But the fact he was on for 2 nights was like, oh, I get to do this all again, like 24 hours later. So I knew within that short space of time, right, I know what I need to do now, compare to difference, and just repeat what I've just done, try and again think of different angles where you can be. And it was just a crazy and funny experience. Yeah, I just didn't expect that at all when I picked up a camera and thinking, oh, in the space of what was it, a year and a half later, you'd be doing that type of thing. It was just like insane. And I always say to anyone who picks up a camera, if they're thinking about pursuing that as a hobby and more, just do it as often and as frequent as you can, because you just never know what opportunity could lead to.
Oh yeah, I'd second that. And also, you don't have to spend an awful lot of money to get started. You can literally pick up your phone, download Lightroom, which is free, and you can literally just go out to your coast and take a picture of the beach or go to your local park, take a picture of the trees and the wildlife because we're slap bang in the middle of, well, we're in the middle of the year, which is nuts to say,
Yeah.
but we're, wildlife's out, the sun's when it wants to comes out. Um, no, I definitely agree with that. With people just wanting to, because they just got to look at yourself and think like over 2 years, you've literally went from taking pictures of nice looking cars to covering a football club and covering a huge artist. So it doesn't have to be in the politest way possibly. Not always working your arse off to get to where you are, because I do believe if you work hard enough, you get rewarded. But
Yeah.
also, right place at the right time and luck comes into it quite a lot. Do you agree?
100%, mate. I think since doing the match day stuff, and then you get a network with a lot of people behind the door at the club, or you kind of, aside of doing that, I'd obviously do a lot of the fitness stuff with former Sunderland player Simon Ramsden, his fitness class down the seafront, and a lot of the members who attend that, you kind of again network into a bigger, wider group, and you find out, oh, this person works for the club, or this person has their own business as a restaurant, or it could be a bar, it could be a number of things. You kind of just start getting chatting on. Oh, I like the photographs you've done for the fitness club. I need. Can you possibly do the videography for this, or can you take photographs at this event? And you're kind of like getting open to like passed on all these opportunities where you're getting asked, oh, my wife's, our kids due in a few weeks' time. Could we possibly book you for a baby photograph session? I'm just like, how's this all possible? Like, like you get asked to do all these like so many different like subjects to come across, and you just got to try it and see what happens. And if it clicks, then great. Then you might think, oh, I didn't realize actually you may have enjoyed doing like a restaurant type stuff, or and but at least you can go into it and say, I'll give it a go. I know my limitations, and obviously I know that the budget's involved. And then if it doesn't work out how it goes, then you just shake hands and move on to the next thing. But if it's something clicks to you personally, you might think, oh well, I want to do that again, and I'm going to try and push that and showcase what I can do. But yeah, I'd say most of it has been down to the opportunity opens another door, and that could open so many other doors beyond that to get to where you've been. Again, I know there's probably people who've grafted for 5 years, 10 years plus, and they're probably just happy just taking stuff on like landscapes, or just taking photographs of the friends and family or whatever. I mean, it may not be for everyone, but I suppose the more you kind of put into it, and the better at the craft you can get at it, more opportunities will come from it.
Oh yeah, I definitely agree. I definitely agree with that. The more you do, the more networking you get to do, the more things it could lead to. Like at the minute, the video's still starting to snowball a bit now because I've did some content for a Morpeth player, Connor Thompson, and now I've got another player getting in touch to say, can you do it for me? And then we've signed another player who said, can you do it for me? So like it just again, I think it is the right place at the right time. I definitely think there is luck, but I also think if you don't sit on your hands and just wait for the work to come to you, I think that's a poor attitude to have personally. If you grind away and learn things, like we're both getting our heads around Photoshop now, I've noticed. Like we're
Yeah,
both started doing like graphics for Sunderland, which if you said to me last year, oh, would you ever do a graphic for us, like for Chris Rigg, for instance, or you doing for Jack Clark, or the football squad for the end of season, I think both of us would have looked at each other and said, nah, not a chance. I haven't got a clue how to use Photoshop. Like
oh mate,
I can literally
yeah,
just, I can literally barely edit a photo on Lightroom, never mind try and do graphic design. But now what we're doing now is, when we've talked about trying different avenues, like we're doing videography, we're doing photography, we're now doing, in a sense, a bit of graphic design. And I'm hoping I'm not offending any graphic designers out there who have been doing this for decades, because they've been using tools, God, since the Stone Age, basically, when they've been using, and here's us little rebels rocking up with bloody Photoshop, just try to take over things. It's mental where we've come from to where we are now, and it's just a case of just, I don't know, never wanting to stop learning. Would you agree?
yeah. I totally agree, mate. I think that since, like I say, when I first started, obviously most of the Instagram feed would be loads of like drone shots, landscape, you name it, or just a bit of everything put on there. And I think over more so this season, most of my work's been pretty much focused on doing stuff for Sunderland or throwing stuff around the stadium or anything to kind of incorporate that. And then it was kind of, I've seen the stuff you were doing obviously for Morpeth and obviously just some of the work you were putting out. Not to say I was like, oh, I see what Michael's doing, I'm going to do that exact same thing. I just saw like more, again, obviously I don't know if your phone listens to you or whatever it is, but you start to see more of this like graphic design coming up. And I thought, if there's some like nights during the week, I've got some downtime where I've got like nothing on to do, I can just basically have a bit of a go of it. And the idea of that graphic design type stuff, like just to point out, similar to this like video and photography, I am purely all self-taught. I didn't go to university. I have literally just picked up a camera, went on YouTube and just watched as much as I can to try and soak up as much knowledge. Same thing with this. You could class it. The thing I'm doing, could you class it as graphic design?
I don't know what you class it as, because we could say graphic design, and some graphic designers might be like, it's clearly not graphic design, and I don't want to offend them, but whatever we're doing, I'm gonna border it. I'm gonna pin it into the sports media, bit of sports media.
Yeah, and I think again, the stuff I've done, I just do it purely again just to entertain myself, putting something together for the fun element of it and see what I can kind of design. Sometimes I think, oh, this looks all right. Sometimes I think, oh, it looks shite, I'm going to start again. And you put it out there, and then you think, oh, it's starting to get a bit of legs here. What do I do next? Do I focus something like from players' years gone by, or do I try something different? And the more legs started to grow off the back of that, I was starting to kind of kick myself going, you know what? I've had a full season to do this. I decided to do it now the season's kind of come to a close, where looking back now, what I've learned in that short space of time, as I say it, I've only been doing this about a month, and or about say 5 weeks. I think one of those weeks I was on holiday, so possibly a month in total where I've again started just having the Lightroom and Photoshop package on my laptop. Photoshop just barely got used, and now it's starting to get used a lot more than Lightroom because I'm doing more of that type of stuff. So it just goes to show you can learn some little bits in a short space of time. And I thought, well, I'm going to use the photos I've collected over the course of the season and do a collage of a certain player, or and I thought, oh, now the season's kind of ended, we're getting into the playoffs, I'll do a poster to kind of promote the next up-and-coming games, like the Luton game that was coming up, or the Watford game. And again, more and more people are starting to share that. As soon as you post it, people who follow repost it their story, so their friends get to see it. And just seeing the amount of legs it grew from there, it's kind of like, oh, I could be on something here. It might not be perfect or far from it. I wouldn't even class it as that, but it seems what people are liking what I'm doing, so I'll kind of just run with this and see how well it goes, to the point where the players are accepting it on their socials, and obviously it just goes berserk. Like, it goes mad from then on in. And I thought, right, I've got two options here. We're getting to potentially going to Wembley. I need to design a poster for, like, we are going to Wembley if we obviously get there. Had it all designed and everything, but I was thinking, am I giving this kind of the kiss of death here? Like, design this, thinking what could potentially happen, all this like time spent on this. But I'm probably just, again, scratching the surface compared to those who were doing it full time. Whether, if they were in a cup final, they'd probably spend all the time designing all these posters, and then they could get deleted. I think there's one lady I follow on Twitter. I think she does the graphic design for Aston Villa. I think her name's Gemma, I believe. But some of the stuff she does is unbelievable, like the graphic side of it. But I think she's also freelance, where she's worked with, I believe, the French national team, Scottish national team.
I think I know who you mean. Yeah, I think I follow her as well.
Yeah, and I've seen, I think she put a comment, it was the Dortmund, how Borussia Dortmund lost the game on the last end of the season. She put a funny comment, something like saying, all those visuals and graphics that are gone straight in the delete bin, because I think a lot of them have spent saying Dortmund going to win the league, and they threw it away on the last day. So there's them challenges that probably come with it. Similar when I've done this little poster design for We Are Going to Wembley, But no sooner as it hit like full time, I was like, oh, well, that'll never see the light of day now. And I can't post it to say this is what we could have been,
Yeah.
because I just thought I'd rather just no one see it. I was happy with how it looked, but I just thought, oh, well, it's one of those things. But again, I probably, if you've spent a lot of time on it, if you're doing it as a full-time paid thing, I suppose it'd be a bit more frustrating. But yeah, but I've thoroughly enjoyed what I've been doing. And obviously I thought, right, well, if we're not going to get there, do a backup one to say, here's the end of the season, feature all the players who had a part to play throughout that course of the season, and then see where it goes from there. And again, it just went insane, the response it got. The players obviously responding to it, liking it, and obviously, it took off like unbelievable. And I think when you start seeing that, you do think, oh, I could be onto something here. Do I pursue this? But then, you've got, if opportunity does arise, they've got people who say, right, we need you, but we need to check your CV for it. And you're like, I've done a couple of weeks YouTube learning. I haven't been there 5 years at uni and got a degree. I haven't got all the initials after my name. I'm just purely all self-taught.
Yeah.
So it's that. I mean, I'll probably touch upon it in a later episode or something, but like that for me, it's like when I left college, I went straight into work, and I've been in the same job now for potentially, I think it's come up to 19 long years.
Wow.
So I've like never had anything in between, never been to any further education. Everything I've kind of done has been self-taught. So I'll always have that kind of thing holding me back, unless someone decides to take that gamble, or whether to give, just say, we can see this lad may have something, and give him potentially the opportunity. Where if someone's coming fresh off the back of a university degree, naturally they're going to see that in the CV and go, well, that looks a lot more appealing compared to someone who's just, self-taught when he's been just watching stuff on a laptop or a phone for a few hours. It's that challenge, but for all the things I've had up until this point, I seriously cannot complain. I'm forever grateful, loved every second of it, and hopefully long may it continue as something better in the future, really, because I want to get out of the day job and focus on something where you can at least get up day by day and think it's actually enjoyable to go to work, rather than the dreaded Monday and stuff you've had to do every day for the past so many years, But I don't know how you feel about whether that's, obviously I know you mentioned you were looking to potentially do this as a full-time thing. I'm guessing everyone gets that same feeling. You want to be doing something you enjoy rather than something you think, just pay the bills and,
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to ask you this. I was just going to follow up with, is that what your target is for you, is to get out that 9 to 5 routine and be that creative person that you're good at?
I think it's like that fear of the so-called like starving artist. Do you go out of a guaranteed monthly income to go into freelance, or get into a position where, I mean, the ideal scenario would be leave a job to go into like a full-time position where you at least, you're getting an income on a month-to-month basis, but at the same time you're doing something you really enjoy. Like, don't get us wrong, it'll be the idea of doing the photography side of it. I could be naive to think that whether you get working with a sport agency for images for like the national press or anything, or whether it could be working alongside the club, again, I really don't know when opportunities may arise. It's just a case of just waiting to see what comes up and then go from there, really. But the day job I've been doing it for that long now. I tapped out years ago. I want to do something completely different, but then it's like having enough in the bank to like what you've learned and stuff, where someone will take that gamble on you, say, right, well, like what you do, there's an opportunity here, possibly apply for it and then see what goes from there. So I'm just plodding along to see what may come up, but hopefully it'll be involved in something I actually enjoy doing, rather than something be like another job where just like it's boring,
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. Like, it's just getting through month by month, paying the bills, paying the rent,
Yeah.
paying the mortgage, what have you. And then if an opportunity arises where it's not going to be, well, it's not, it has to be guaranteed, obviously, that it's going to cover you, but it could be more money than what you would make in, say, a month. That for me is kind of a target. But if it's in sport, it's definitely, that's a bonus for me. I love doing the photography and videography stuff, but it has to, like, for me to be confident to say, right, I'm going to jack in the 9 to 5, it has to be something to do within sport because that's all I know and it's what I love. I like doing social media for companies. It's great because you get to be creative, but when your knowledge and your experiences in sport, that's what I really want to do. So hopefully, fingers crossed for us, mate. Like and say if this podcast is going 5 years down the line, we're both saying, "Oh, I were both in full-time employment. You being at Sunderland and me being at another club or something like that." That'll be class. But what I thought I'd do is just because I know we're getting close to an hour here. Like I didn't realize we could talk that long. To be fair,
Have we really gone on that long? I
we've
feel it feels like it's only been like 5 minutes.
no, definitely it's like 50 minutes. We're almost touching the threshold of an hour, which it doesn't even feel like it. I thought just to round it off, to ask the question and just to get an idea of for people listening to this, what's been your favorite moment so far since you've picked up the camera, whether it's video, a photo, something that's made you go, fucking hell, yes, I'm not gonna forget that ever.
I think that obviously from the amount of like the games I've covered, there's been obviously certain like when you've scored a goal and then you get lost in that moment where I'm looking down the line of the other lads who do the photography in the stadium, and they've got ice in the veins. Their composure is just like they'll sit there and they want to get that photo. Where obviously some of them are doing it for like national or local press. Whereas me, I don't have that like around me, so I'm kind of like it's hard to. You see, Jack Clark will score an amazing goal. I'm a Diallo, you name it. We've had some great goals scored at home, and then you kind of the ball hit the back of the net, and you'll hear that. You're only a few feet in front of the fans anyway, but that distance between them, the raw just feels like as if it's like jumping on you. So you naturally burst with that emotion, and you're thinking, I want to be like running down the byline myself, ready to jump on the players and celebrate with them. But then part of you's like, right, reel it in. You need to get photos of this like moment of fans celebrating players. I think those are the moments where I've just been in awe. Where I've had people message after the game saying, we can see how you look so happy doing what you're doing. And it's like it is. It's like it doesn't obviously feel like work, far from it. I just love being part of that. Again, going back to telling that story. But if there's one particular moment where I've loved it that much is when I think it was it the Middlesbrough game. I think it was when Amad Diallo scored. And there was a game later on this season where I'm sitting near the north stand, and again he scores. I think it was the second goal he scored against Middlesbrough, and here he is running to the corner, and then you just like it's that frenzy of thinking, right, I've got to grab the correct camera with the correct lens on. The players are going to be running over. Get ready for this. So you've got all that pandemonium around you with everyone going berserk, but you've got to kind of just say remain calm. Hopefully you can get in focus, and here he is celebrating, and then all of a sudden he just looks. You feel like you're the only one there. He's looking dead at you down the lens, doing his trademark celebration, and all you're doing is just like it just feels like time stops where you're just clicking away as many photos as possible, hoping for the best. They're all in focus. He runs off back to the centre circle, and you're kind of just standing there, forgetting where you are, flicking back through your preview screen to see what images you've got, and then you just kind of know that you've got the shot you were looking for. And there's been times where I'm just kind of like frozen in time, going like just so happy, and then realizing, I need to start celebrating now because obviously we've just scored. It's them moments where I've loved so much over the course of the season, but especially when you get like those type of shots where the players are celebrating with the crowd, all that emotion within that story of it. Those are the ones that have been like unreal. But I think the two particular moments for Amad Diallo where that photo against Middlesbrough, and then it got used on the cover of the club's programme for the International Fans Day. That very one where he scored exactly the same on that game and celebrated in the same place. It was kind of a carbon copy of the photo we did. It was kind of just weird how it worked out. So I would say that particular moment, getting one of our best loan players, hopefully he'll come back, whether we will or not, I don't know. But I think that particular moment is where I've like thought, wow, I just love what I'm doing, and I hope it continues. How about yourself? I mean, has there been a particular moment where everything's just clicked, or has there been a particular thing where you've just like been so happy with what you do?
There's a couple, to be fair, and it's all with Morpeth. Like I think the the one where really made the hairs of on the back of my neck stand up and give us ridiculous goosebumps was when we played York in the FA Trophy. I think it was the third or fourth round, or the FA Cup. I think no, it was the first one. Was the FA Cup qualifying rounds, and if we beat York, we would be in the first proper round for the first time in our history. I think it was,
Right.
and we had to go to York. Is it the LNER Community Stadium? So at this point, I bought a. I didn't want. No, I didn't buy a new lens then. I went in there not knowing because this was a league up, so I didn't know if there would be any standards. If I had to have anything in particular, I always take my high vis to any sport just in case because I know that some clubs don't let you on a pitch side without a high vis. So
The
that
trusty high vis, yeah.
trusty blue high vis has to be the one. I'm waiting to get something printed on the back of it. That's when it's official.
That's what I was going to say. Anyone who's listening, get a high vis. You
Yeah,
get it anywhere. That's like
yeah,
that's the key to get it anywhere
yeah,
because people think, oh, he clearly knows what he's doing. He's got a high vis. Really, you'd think you probably don't want to like stand out as much. But I think most people think when you see people up on a building site where we just let them get on because they think, oh, they've got a high vis on. But I
yeah.
think if you're going to try, not so much do the sport, don't like hold us to it. But if you're going to do anything, you think, oh, if I wear high vis, I think most people will probably leave you alone to do what you want.
Yeah.
Run that risk, but the high vis is a good thing to buy if you haven't. There's one bit of photography gear you get. There's definitely a high
Oh,
vis.
I definitely agree. I definitely agree because without it, I think there'd be a lot of venues I would have been turned down for, or I would have been asked to step away from pitch side, which could cost you that shot that you had
Yeah,
with Ahmed. But when it was the Morpeth stuff, I had my high vis on. Just I brought it with just in case I had it on. Didn't need it in the end. To be fair, they were quite relaxed at York, which was fine. I think this is when they were going through a really difficult transition because they had Steve Watson, boo, Newcastle, boo, as manager. So I think they were going, and I think there was some kind of, I don't know, negative aspect with owners. We've both been through the mill with current owners with our club as well.
yeah,
So I kind of got the vibe that they just weren't happy. The ground was partially empty apart from, I'm not sure what the layout is, but the stand that was packed. I don't know what side that stand was, but it was noisy. And then Morpeth took about, I think, 200 fans that they could get in the bottom tier of the ground. And when I walked past them, honestly, the hairs, like you mentioned with the fans, when you did it, like I know exactly what you were going through because it was like a this is it moment. Like this is what I want to do. As soon as I heard that first chant, that was it. That was like I want to do this for the rest of my life. Now it could
yeah.
be adrenaline, it could be heat the moment, but honestly, that one moment when we scored a last minute header, how on earth I did not chuck the camera and just throw myself in there with the lads, I will never know. And before that, if you watched, I don't know if you watched that, if anyone watched highlights, but if you watch the highlights of that game and look really carefully where I'm standing, I'm literally putting memory cards out. And as the corner comes in, I've literally just put the memory card in and turned the camera on, and Ben has headed it. So I was really, again, luck. I've mentioned it. Luck,
Yeah.
right place at the right time. And when he scored that, my God, it was only 200 people, but it felt like 50,000. Like, because everyone loves a last minute goal. There was definitely limbs. There was definitely like people like trying to get onto the pitch at some point, which was naughty. I get it, but how often do you get to score against a team higher? That was one moment, and we did it. We visited them again in the FA Trophy, but we took 300, I think it was, and we filled partially like one of the main stands, and that noise was just phenomenal. Like we lost, unfortunately. We were 2-0 up, which I thought, fucking hell, we're gonna do something that we've never done for like ever. And we got beat, unfortunately, 3-2. But things I've always wanted to do was walk on the pitch with the players as they say thank you to the fans.
Yeah.
Tick. did that. Walk on, like when I'm walking around the pitch, have the fans shout out your name, because you would have had this as well. I know for a fact you've had this where they've been like Michael or Ross, and you're kind of thinking,
Yeah.
"Oh, you're right, mate," and they can see you, and you mentioned it. They can see how happy you are to be there. And they're like, "Way, get in, lad, you're doing it," and I'm thinking, "Yeah, I am doing it." But then I think the crowning one for me is when we won the Northumberland Cup recently. And we played at St James's Park. Boo, St James's Park, boo. But like to go there and like for me, I had to put the Sunderland hat away and be think I have to be quite professional. Like you've got to respect where you are. It's not the Stadium of Light. It's fine. Crack on, mate. It's not often you're going to get to be in this stadium where you are behind the scenes, getting access to so many things. So watching the lads, and I dare say it against Blythe, comfortably win, and watch them lift a trophy in front of, I reckon there was at least 1,000 fans there. Like that was mental. And what I'll never forget is being there to lift the cup, but also like there was one moment where I caught a couple of the lads. I think it's Brandon or Brendan, his name is. I keep forgetting his name. And there's a collective of lads there who always come to the Morpeth games. I always say hello to them. And they always they've come to the last few away games, bless them. Like they've travelled miles because some of these away games are ridiculously long.
Yeah.
But what I did is I saw them and I was like, get in. And then just as I did that, the entire stand erupted. And I thought, what the fuck? Like just the noise, like you hit it like a brick wall. But then just talking to the players afterwards, because I had to do the interviews after. So talking to the players after, you could just see how much it meant to them, even though they had a bit of an up and down season. But there's a video I put out on my Twitter where literally seconds after I finished talking with Jeff Henderson, the captain, we just had a massive hug and said, get in. And that's what made us feel even more connected to the club, where I thought, you know what, I'm going to stay for another season at least. Because I was going to leave Morpeth, you see.
Yeah,
So
when we last spoke quite a while back, you did touch upon the fact that you were thinking about like the challenges you face with it, and you were thinking like the travel and everything else you put in. I remember you saying like, "Oh, I'm not sure if I'm going to continue with it," but then it's mad to think like, had you done that, you would not have like got a chance to experience this. Let's just say let's just say all the things that you have experienced still happened, but you could have been watching it from afar, or you could have been like, you know what,
kicking
typical,
myself.
I've knocked this on the head and I've missed out on this whole thing, and I could have really progressed. And you know, it's a fine line of should I or should I not do this, doubting yourself, or and then you think, you know what, I'm just going to crack on at least and give it another go and see what happens. And at least then you'll know after that long time, you might think, oh well, now I know even more so it's not for me. But now you've had that full season under your belt, it's giving you that drive to want to explore more and get more from it, you know?
Oh God, yeah, absolutely. Like when you said that, I had to think about it. What it would have been like if not experienced that moment, and it would have been a kick. Like, what do you regret in life? And that, little things like that you could regret. Now, some people listening to this might think, well, it's only a Northumberland Cup. Yeah, that's right. It's only a tiny local cup. But how often do you get as a person to what we do to get to go into a ground which is, let's face it, it is massive. It's intimidating when you go inside and just see how big it actually is. And imagine 55,000 people in there. But also watch your team that you've worked for so many years do something that you never anticipate they would do because of a season. So I'm kind of glad I stuck it out, and I'm kind of glad that like after that season I thought, you know what, I'm going to stick around. And I've made some changes. I've said like if the away games are like more than 3 hours, I'm just not going to be able to go, because it does take up a full day. And unless it's a professional like full-time club, I'll think about doing stuff like that, because I'd imagine you get covered for travel and stuff. But like sitting on a bus, it's good crack. Don't get us wrong; it's amazing crack on the team bus. But if you've suffered a defeat or you're absolutely wrecked, and it can be quite a long journey back.
Yeah, I can imagine. So even if, like, you see, if you're going to watch Sunderland away and you've travelled the length and breadth of the country and you get beat, you just mood,
Oh,
just like, oh, you just went down and river. But then I suppose once you're kind of in that circle and you've been beat, like you're still like, whether I'm not saying all the current players feel like this, we're far from it, but years gone by, you could probably get on a bus with the players when we're in like like towards the end of the Premier League, getting relegated down to League One and stuff, that atmosphere, I think some of them certain players where they'll probably get on the bus and just laugh and carry on, thinking,
Yeah.
"Oh, I'm earning this, I'm not bothering." And you're as a fan, kind of having to bite your tongue, where really you'd be thinking, oh, like fuck this, you know what I mean? Like, oh, you want to say how you feel, but that long journey back, you just think, oh Jesus, you're kind of trapped in that bubble
Yeah.
sort of thing, where you kind of gotta remain pro, but also you got to kind of bite your tongue because you sometimes you want to say how you feel, but could lead you to end up getting collared from it, you know. So
Yeah, definitely. No, I definitely agree. Like as a fan of Morpeth, and you see the lads like they'll be playing cards and stuff, and you kind of think, well, it's all right for you to suffer a bit because you're a fan, but end of the day, that's how they unwind. They don't like sit and laugh and carry on. Far from after a defeat, but they don't at the same time they don't sit and sulk. Like they literally just go, right, shall we play some cards? Shall we, put some tunes on? Who's doing karaoke because it's a new signing? So you know what I mean? Like there is a balance of that. I've never once got on the team bus after I've had like a defeat or an embarrassing game and be like, what the fuck are you all laughing at? Because
yeah,
that's you know what I mean? What is the point of someone doing that? Because one, you'd get destroyed by the players. Because I've seen them like take the piss out of people. I wouldn't stand a chance. I'd get absolutely ripped apart. And two, what kind of you're setting a negative aspect within the change room, which if it's going through a tough time, they don't need that. They need to be told we can do this. So that's where you're right, where you bite your tongue, you just accept it. And also, as you're driving down, thinking, how the fuck am I going to make this a video? Like, I just like for Ross, he does all the match highlights, and I've done some of the match highlights as well. But Ross does the majority of them. And I'm thinking like if we've been like battered 3-0 or whatnot, I'm looking at him editing these highlights thinking, how on earth do you get something out of that that's not just showing their goals? So it is one
I
of those
suppose that side of
aspects.
it, I suppose the edge. Sorry, Jack. I suppose one of those things again we can follow up on like a future episodes is where like it's all rosy when like you've been to a game, we've won, and you've got the shots you're looking for. Everyone's on top buzz, but there's also the side of it where just nothing goes right. The match doesn't end the way. I mean, I'm thinking like say the Stoke game earlier this season at home. It just getting beat 5-1 at home. Obviously with Alex Neil coming back, it just everything was just so like ugh. So there's them type of situations where from a photographer's side, like you're there to capture everything, but your mood just drops as well because you just think, oh, there's all the place I'd rather be is here. I haven't
Yeah,
like
no, no, I
be
agree.
surrounded by all this negativity.
I know, no, no, I totally agree. I totally agree. But it's part of parcel of football, isn't it? Like in sport
Yeah,
in general, like you're never ever going to win, and it's the same with photography. You're not always going to grab that money shot or videography where you think you're going to get the shot, it doesn't work, or you think I'm going to get the drone out here and it's pissing down with rain, so you have to think of plan B, or with the graphic stuff, you're thinking, I've got this mint idea in your head, and you put it on the computer and it's shit. So you've like
yeah.
lost 2 hours. So it's just like, do you know what I mean? Like it's just one of those. It's just one of those things where you just have to just like grin and bear it because it is what it is, as I like to say. It is what it is.
No, I mean, I think it's a lovely way to wrap it up. I suppose in terms of like an introductory thing, we've got so much more we're going to talk about the various subjects, various instances I'd said games we've both been to here, like where it's gone really well, where it hasn't, or there's been certain moments where you can recap on certain funny stories from, say, like again, when we touched on the cheering thing, obviously I can divulge more into how I nearly got kicked out of the stadium and them type of little stories. So
Damn interesting. I'm already hooked for
yeah,
episode 2, if that's the case then.
yeah. So like we've got so much we can go on to, and again, I think for a first episode, I think I'm sound with this. So hopefully, I haven't waffled on too much, and people listen and go, "Fucking hell!" Like I have to listen to all this again. So we'll capture people's, the thoughts on this. And again, the aim is to get people, other photographers and videographers involved in this over the course of. Let's see how it goes, but more to hear from people's questions. And again, like I said before, I'm no expert by any means, but I'll just answer it the best I can and share my thoughts like probably you'll do your same, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think because we've all got social media channels now, just if anyone's got any questions or they're just curious about our aspects of past work and what we're doing, just pop it in either LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. just pop it in there, and we can probably bring it up on a future episode if people want to listen to, and if they don't mind having the questions answered, we could probably answer it on here.
Yeah, again, I think if people want to remain obviously anonymous to answer the question, if they don't want the name read out, again, we'll happy to put that forward. Because I know it can be daunting. People don't want to be like, oh, I'm asking like a silly question. I don't think there's any silly questions while you're learning. Again, we've all been there. You start off, or if you're unsure about anything, it's best to just ask, and at least you'll know where you stand thereafter. I mean, I'm still learning to this day. I'll happily ask loads of questions because obviously I'm keen to learn.
Yeah.
There's been times I think I'm asking this because it sounds stupid, but then you get told something, oh, well, I didn't know that, and you might learn something from that. So, yeah, we'll see how it goes from there.
Yeah.
That's been cool, mate. Happy to wrap episode 1, and then hopefully this is not the last one.
Hopefully not. Hopefully people are still listening.
Cool, mate. No, it's been an absolute pleasure. Yeah, it's the end of episode 1. Let's see what happens on episode 2.